So, it is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. this year. The day that we would remember that is coming up on April 4th. And my sons and I have been reading a book for quite a while, because it's not very thin, called it's the autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr. He never wrote an autobiography, but this gentleman, Claiborne Carson, organized this book. Martin Luther King had, Reverend King had, written enough stuff over the years that it could be organized into an autobiography. And, we know that he laid a lever, him and those with him, against humanity and pushed on that lever and changed things. But this book really helps me to understand where he was really coming from. And including myself, we often, maybe refer back to Reverend King and those who are with him as offhand references, maybe as an example, which is good. But to really understand what went into his philosophy and the actions of nonviolence, it was a very deliberate and very crafted set of ideas, and then they put them into action. And for him, the goal was brotherhood. And for him, it was based in the gospel of Jesus Christ. You can't subtract that out of there. I'm not saying that we all have to tap into that, but that for him, that was definitely the fire and the reason and the source material, both intellectually and from the heart, that the courage that he got that allowed him to do what he did. Anyway, so I'm probably maybe not every day, but I'm going to share some things that really touched me in this book. And he wrote a letter called, it was a huge letter, and he wrote it when he was in jail in Birmingham. The letter. And they were doing the campaigns in Birmingham, and this was 1963, and that involved sitting at lunch counters that they had not been allowed to sit at, and there were some other things going on, but that was one of the main things that happened. And they did other parades and protests, and of course many of them were arrested, and Reverend King was arrested. And while he was in jail, he happened to see a newspaper in which an advertisement had been taken out, and that advertisement was in the form of a letter that had been signed by several clergymen who were white, and a rabbi, some Catholic bishops, and some other, there was like 8 of them. And they had written this letter to the protesters in general, and to Reverend King. And it was odd because the clergymen were not opposed to integration, but they were upset with the way that Reverend King was going about it. They thought that the demonstrations were a little much, and so they were asking them to stop. And this prompted Reverend King to write this letter, this very long letter, about responding to their ideas and where he was coming from with this. And so it's a very important letter. And so the first thing that I'm going to read from such an attitude, responding to the clergyman, such an attitude stems from a tragic misconception of time, from the strangely irrational notion that there is something in the very flow of time that will inevitably cure all ills. Actually, time itself is neutral. It can be used either destructively or constructively. And then this line really hit me. Sorry, I'm trying to deal with the book and the selfie stick. Alright, so this is the line that really struck me. More and more, I feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than have the people of goodwill. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of men willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. We must use time creatively. In the knowledge, and I love this too, in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right. The time is always ripe to do right. I'm not going to add much more to that, except to say ditto. He said it. And so maybe we can think, when it comes to doing actions of justice and peace as he and those with him did, that we can understand how to use time, which is to put the hard work into it, and that it's always the right time to do what's right. And I have thought about this, that, you know, when we think about people who have done great evil, it's not because that they were evil that they were so successful. It's because they were so focused. Because one of the things sometimes of evil is that things get out of balance, and so they're out of balance to be focused on something. Like Hitler was very, very, very focused. The Mongol hordes were very, very focused, you know, and they were focused on something that was out of balance, but it allowed for a great deal of focus. And I think people of goodwill sometimes do not have that focus. We're spread across a lot of different things and trying to have a balanced life, which is not a bad thing in and of itself. But when it comes time to choose something to change, we have to pick up that focus, and then good is just as powerful, if not 500 times more powerful than any evil. It's the focus. It's the way that time and energy is used. So think about that. I'll see you.